Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Corporate Jet Investor Town Hall. We've got a very exciting week this week, looking at habits, and I'm going to hand over straight away to Jay Messenger. He has come up with the concept. He's invited most of the speakers. So Jay, what was your thoughts about changing habits?
Well, Al, starting last March, much of our vocabulary changed. We started to talk about working at home, not traveling, social distancing, wearing masks, not socializing, quarantining, and capacity. So much upended the world we knew. Not only upended the world we knew, but also every habit of how we gathered, communicated, and interacted as an industry. These changes have impacted to this day the way our industry did and does business. I thought that the topic of today's town hall was relevant and fascinating. We've gathered panelists today that each respectively have seen and in fact possibly even helped shape the habits in their own segments of the industry. I'm so proud to be sponsoring this with Corporate Jet Investor. In fact, I have to say and compliment you and Louisa for what you have built during this pandemic in trying to continue to find ways for us as a group to communicate, be together, find things to do to build and strengthen our industry, and your town halls are terrific venues. So congratulations and thanks for allowing us to be with you today.
No, thanks so much for coming on and your very nice words. So how do you think aircraft buyers and sellers' habits have changed?
Oh, I think every bit of how we did business, we had to learn new ways, starting with, the ease of just taking clients and meeting them at a prospective airplane to look at. Even to this day, going into many of the corporate hangars, you've got to be willing to take a rapid test, certainly take temperature to even get in. Being able to do demonstration flights have changed dramatically. The ease with which people will want you to come in, much of that has changed. People were also really so concerned starting last March with, would we have an industry? And I've said several times that, people would call starting in March of last year and say, I'm never going to get on a commercial airplane again. I'm going to buy an airplane. As I mentioned before, that was really kind of idle conversation until May, I guess. So we lost a quarter. And starting in May, first-time buyers started to act on that conversation and actually buy at rates that our industry's never seen. I know our business, transactionally, we haven't done as many transactions in the preceding years. And remember, it's been only a 9-month year when you think about it. So lots changed. I'm so excited about what could come back, what habits we used to know and enjoy that could be back in gear, which is why I'm so excited to have Ed join us today and talk about one of the habits that I know we love, and that's being together and socializing and learning about our industry in person and with our fellow industry professionals. So very excited.
Okay, you've brought Ed in. We're absolutely delighted to have NBAA's Ed Boland. Needs no introduction. Jay, what do you want to ask Ed?
Well, I think one of the things that's been so interesting is coping with and developing methods to keep our industry together and keep it communicating in the absence of having the regional forums or the events that would be in person, but getting us used to this kind of learning, this kind of virtual learning. And I have to compliment you too, Ed, because you've taken NBA across a huge threshold. How's it been?
Well, I think a lot of times in aviation, we're pretty good about focusing on what is working rather than what isn't. And, we always are trying to adapt and evolve, learn from each other. And I think, we recognized we were all together in Charlotte for schedulers and dispatchers. The curtain kind of came down in mid-March. And so like a lot of other industries, we pivoted. We tried to find ways to communicate with people where they are. And that meant doing virtual conferences. We've done virtual trade shows. We've got eBase Connect coming up. So we've really spent a lot of time trying to find ways to meet people where they are, give them the information they need, and try to create a sense of community. And I think, Jay, you talked about the great job that CJI has done in that. And I think a lot of organizations have really reached out, because one of the real strengths of our business aviation industry is that it is a business aviation community. We know people, we care about people. I think for us, it's personal. And I think what we've seen is that just as in our personal lives, we've had to adapt to not being able to give the hugs, but still stay in touch and use whatever channels we have. And that's what we've been trying to do. And I think it's helped get us through a period. But as you know, Jay, you're a hugger. There's a lot of people that want to get back to giving hugs and seeing people in person, and being able to not just see them virtually, but be in their presence.
You know, if I could say something, Ed, when you think about the huge number of first-time buyers that have come in to the market during this time, and not having the access to understanding the industry first time, a lot of the responsibility has been on, they're first-time buyers, but they're using seasoned, mature pilots. So it's a lot of the learning for these first-time buyers is coming through the people they put around them, that they can see in person and be with and understand. So the burden on an NBAA to keep the momentum going through that third-party channel is magnificent that you could do it.
Well, I think it's exciting. We do have new people coming in, as you mentioned, and so that gives us an opportunity to learn to tell our story in compelling ways. A lot of times we've been able to, in the past, use acronyms and benchmarks that all of us have grown up with. Now we're trying to communicate with people that don't recognize a lot of the language that we've been speaking. And I think that's going to help us as we learn to communicate with new people coming into the industry to make things simpler, more straightforward. I think there's a lot of opportunity in this.
And do you think people's habits have fundamentally changed? Or do you think we've just adapted and then in a year's time, people go back to their old ways?
Well, I think, habits can be built up pretty quickly. And so, I think anyone who's started a workout program has been told that, if you do it for 3 weeks, you can keep doing it. It will become a habit. So I think all of us learned to use technology to communicate. And I think that will be forever part of who we are. But I also think that just as telegraphs, phones, and other means of communication help people stay in touch, maintain relationships, there is something that happens when people are face to face. There is something about sharing a meal, sharing a laugh, just spending time in each other's company that is valuable. So I think just as all of us are going to find ways to maximize every minute we have, we also recognize that there is something magical that happens when people get together. And I suspect going forward, we'll just add to our inventory of ways to communicate, not necessarily eliminate one form or the other.
Jay,
I think you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I'll bet you that this, isn't it funny how sometimes we don't clean that closet out? And what closets are we cleaning out? As you look at NBAA and your closet of products, it's probably been a nice opportunity to relook at those products and say, these worked. We probably should have been working on this one earlier. I bet you that it gives you and your staff a chance to understand the products that NBA has and think about which ones could be made better, or which ones might be a duplicate.
Well, I think whether it's personal or professional, the pandemic has caused people to take a step back, evaluate their lives, evaluate their careers, and ask fundamental questions. What's important? What's the purpose? Is this the right thing at the right time? And so I think that NBAA has been on a journey, as everybody has personally and professionally. And I think we've been able to offer new products in new and different ways. And it's also given us a chance to rethink things. So in some ways, this has been an opportunity to evaluate, to think strategically, and to really have an opportunity to put all things on the table and determine the best way forward with the assets that we have.
Right. You know, I think what I'd love in this enthusiastic moment for you to take a second and just give us some highlights of BASE coming up in Vegas in October.
Well, we're excited about BASE. That's October 12th, 13, and 14. We'll be back in Las Vegas, which is where we had a spectacular show in 2019. And I think as we move forward in 2021, the good news is Las Vegas has just opened a brand new convention center or exhibit hall. It's state of the art, a lot of light. It's built for technology. And I think it'll give us a chance to really showcase some of the things that have really been a focus for our industry over the course of the last couple of years. Sustainability, you'll recall, was a big part of the convention in 2019. Every aircraft that flew in flew out on sustainable aviation fuel. But my gosh, the awareness that has gone into sustainable aviation fuel and other ways to be sustainable. This will give us a chance to really celebrate where we are and be able to move forward. Diversity, inclusion, another big thing that we were talking about as we were trying to figure out then how do we solve the workforce challenges that we had. Well, as our industry is getting back, we're beginning to see those workforce challenges again, and it's important for us to reach out and be able to pull in the best talent wherever they may be. From wherever they may be. So that will be a big opportunity. And of course, the innovation, the number of products coming to the market, whether it's traditional aircraft or the advanced air mobility, the supersonic, there's just a lot going on from a technology standpoint. So I think this will be an opportunity to celebrate technology, innovation, workforce, sustainability. I think this will be business aviation at its broadest and at its best.
That's wonderful. You know, if I could just say one more thing that I'm watching, which is going to continue to boost the important role of BASE, is because we have really picked most of the best airplanes, at least at the moment, off the market because of the frenzy of the fourth quarter. I think it's taking people back to thinking more seriously about buying new, where before the divide often between the new aircraft prices and pre-owned was such that it really gave a lot of incentive to go to pre-owned. I think the OEMs, and hopefully Steve will talk about this a bit later, are going to enjoy a huge boost in business. And what a great place to see their products and have people get in them and compare them than to have it at BASE. And just one more thing. And I don't know if he's watching today, but a very dear friend of mine, Mike Nichols, who is going to be retiring at the end of this week from NBAA, and I know cause a huge void, has been such a dear person and such a fabulous proponent of business aviation. I wish him great success and wish him well.
Well, Mike's an extraordinary professional, and he's an extraordinary person, as you all know. His list of signature achievements at NBAA is almost infinite. So a great professional, a great person, and we're wishing him all the best, and hopefully we can keep him in the business aviation industry that he is so passionate about.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a real loss. Ed, finally, you've been in the industry for a long time, and you've been through ups, and you've been great ups, and you've been through great downs. What's your prediction for the next 5 years?
You know, I'm very bullish about it for all the reasons that we have been talking about. Business aviation is about providing this on-demand air mobility, the ability to get people and products where they need to be when they need to be there. And we've had a lot of people who have come into our industry who have experienced the benefits. And so I think we will now have a lot of people who will be ambassadors for our community. And as I said before, I think we're learning to talk to people who we've not talked to before. And we're changing the way people approach us and we approach them. And so I think we have an opportunity to build on some of the lessons, to look at the mindset of some of these new entrants. Now that they're exposed to business aviation and the benefits it presents, I think we can build on that. And I think we've got a new word of mouth community of industry advocates.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Ed. We really appreciate you coming on and your time, and great to see you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, Jay, optimistic. I think the consensus from everyone on the chat, well, there's two big themes. One, that it's going to be an amazing MBAA. Lauren Goutal is desperate to hug you and your family. And the other consensus is, I think, Mike Nichols, who's leaving MBAA after many years in many roles, but has also touched on a huge number of people in the air traffic transaction market, is a great guy, is the other great consensus. I'm just now going to try and get our next, we've just got a next one connecting now. Hopefully, tech working. We're now absolutely delighted to have Mike Silvestro, CEO FlexJet. Jay, do you want to introduce Mike?
I'd love to. You know, Mike's has been a good friend for many years. He has been at the helm of a very successful business, a business that has really taught us another solution in travel. And when it came time to think about habits changing and people using this kind of a product more and more and more, having Mike on and him saying yes to join us was so powerful. So Mike Silvestro, CEO of FlexJet, I welcome you and look forward to hearing and talking to you this morning about some of the habits that you've seen change and have created in new solutions for clients.
Okay, Mike's just connecting now. Let's just go through a question while that happens. Stephen Ferriak is asking, will there be a great sell-off in a year or two after COVID is no longer a concern and the new buyers can go back to commercial aviation and save the cost of going private?
You know, I've always thought that private aviation is just part of a solution. I think that people that own airplanes often also fly commercial. They often also charter, and they often also have FlexJet type shares. So I don't think there'll be a sell-off. I think that that's a hard habit to break when you start really enjoying it, and especially if you came into it with all the right expectations and all the right cost considerations. I think the people that are getting in it are going to love it and stick with it. And yeah, they might go back to flying commercial sometimes, because you shouldn't buy a plane for 100% of your needs anyway. There ought to always be some other kind of a solution to make up that 30 or 40% that the plane you bought won't do. So you might still use a commercial to go first class to Asia. But I don't think there'll be a sell-off. I think people came into it for all the right reasons. Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike.
Can you hear us?
He's got a great program, but a bad internet connection.
I think Mike probably spends more on connectivity than most people.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, Mike, welcome.
I can hear you.
Thank you so much for.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Got it.
Thanks for accepting the invitation. I appreciate that a lot. But we'll wait for you to connect. He's probably doing this interview from a FlexJet airplane, 30,000 feet in the air.
That is why face-to-face is so much better, because you don't have this issue.
Right.
Okay, we've lost Mike briefly. We'll come back and get Mike back on. He is connecting. what I'm also going to do is let's see if we can line up Stuart Lapioca as well, who I think is also maybe having some technical issues. Joe, we've got another question from Mike Francis. What are you hearing from new entrants? How many do you think will stay? So it's a similar question to the last one.
Similar question. I would say the lion's share of those that got in. And for those people that might have gotten in, as every once in a while happens for the wrong reasons or with the wrong expectation of what something's going to cost, a few of those might drop out. But transactions are very expensive, and the cost of selling, the cost of not only the aircraft commission, but the loss of value and a short-term ownership piece is not something you want to tackle right away after getting in. So I hope that people will be long-term players, enjoy why they got in, enjoy how they got in, and stick around. Hello, Stuart.
Hello, Jen.
For those of you not watching, we're delighted to be joined by Stuart Lapioca from Lapioca Jet Council, the unique Stuart Lapioca. Jane, what do you want to ask Stuart?
Well, Stuart, as we talked yesterday and we've talked about the theme of today, it's what habits have changed and what habits have changed that affect how a deal is papered. What kind of things do you see that need to be discussed that weren't discussed pre-COVID that now have to be part of a contract or an LOI?
Well, the FAA changed its filing process. If you think through it, it creates some challenges for especially lenders with respect to the time between dropping a document in a bin. Who would have thought that in 2021 we're dropping things in a bin instead of either handing them over or using electronic filing. So that is sort of going back in time a little bit, and so we have to deal with the legal implications of what does that mean? What does that mean that there can be an intervening filing? There's time between the FAA confirming filing time and the time you drop it in the bin. So that's one thing. I think people have focused a great deal more now on the force majeure clauses. I think people are throwing the word pandemic in there. I'm still not sure what that would mean. If there is a delay caused by whatever, usually there's some carve-outs to that the person who is subject to the force majeure has to also not have been negligent in creating it. So there's some questions there. We really haven't had many problems with that because I think the inspection facilities have really upped their game on the technology, and they've implemented protocols in terms of timing and being able to see the pre-buy and things like that. So I think luckily we haven't seen too many issues there. The issues really came up in the first few days or the first few weeks of the shutdown in March.
So lenders have gotten more attuned to some of the delays and some of the changes, and I guess are more willing to play the game a bit differently because they don't really have a choice.
Yeah, that's the case, and I think when you hear from a client, when are we going to close? You have to add 9 more caveats to your answer in order to make them happy.
Do you think the FAA will go back, or will they always use some form of bin system going forward?
That's a good question. There is a move. Actually, they started it before COVID interrupted it, but they are trying to ramp up their technology. I think eventually we will go to a fully electronic platform. So that will happen eventually, but in the short term, I think it's been working for them. It's been addressing their issues of obviously, protecting their employees from the virus, et cetera. I think in the midterm, it's probably going to stay where it is.
So do you feel like your deals are more efficient today as a result of any of this, or more complicated?
A lot of people have more technology, so you've got some real-time collaboration through technology. You can share screens, you can look at documents together. I would say it's interesting that I think we've gone back in time a little bit because we're dealing with all these new entrants. So you're having to go back and start from the beginning. You used the term base. I don't think they know what that is. You need more education, more hand holding. You're spending a lot more time on structure. I think you probably spend a lot more time with the new entrants on why a pre-owned aircraft is okay versus getting a new aircraft. So I think it's the same, but it's different. It's taken a little more work, education.
So if you had a takeaway for today's entrants, be they first-time buyers or seasoned, mature flight departments, is there anything that you would, in your initial structure discussion, talk about?
Well, they usually the first thing that we end up talking about is, they're usually bonus depreciation hysterical.
Right.
And they've heard a lot from a lot of people, and it's mostly not correct. So, you really need to get through that first so that they can satisfy their objective. Because if that's a main objective, there are some hurdles to jump to satisfy it. I think, we're back to the new entrants, since they're not really that educated with how we do things and how the industry works. I think we're back to them thinking it's like real estate. So the standard contract, no such thing. Things like that. It's an interesting process.
Right. Well, you always do a fabulous job with your clients and put them at ease.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So, final question. I think you started learning the guitar a year ago. I see it behind your shoulder. How is it going?
Oh, I hang my laundry on it, and I have it there to remind me it's something I need to go back to. It's the same old thing. When you have the time, you can take care of yourself, but when you don't, you end up taking care of other people before you take care of yourself. I lost a lot of weight and I exercised, but I didn't get to perfect the guitar.
It's much better for your overall health than guitar playing. So
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
Great to see you.
So now we have Mike. Are you with us, Mike? Can you hear us? Just another pretty face.
Mike?
I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, you can. Great. So, thanks.
Hear me?
Yeah. Welcome. I thought about having you on today as the topic of this event is about new habits. And I know that many people who said they never wanted to fly on commercial airlines again have come to solutions like yours and FlexJet. How has your customer base grown over the last year?
Right.
Well,
Exponentially, Jay. We've seen more new entrants into both in the last 20 years. Lost me again?
Then Mike, keep going. We've got you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah, the number of entrants that have come into the space from people who want to fly themselves, want to fly their elderly parents, want to fly their children, just to want to avoid the airlines has been unprecedented, to say the least.
So exponential growth, new entrants, new business coming in. Mike, how sticky are your new customers?
Well, I love that term, Ali, because that we all like to think we're really smart, but when it really does come down to it, you really understand how sticky they are. I would tell you, I think everybody wants to know, will these people stay with us, right? Are they going to be in the space for a while? A couple of things. Number one, we all know how addicting this is. You start flying privately before. I think it's a hard habit to not do. These are people who have the financial wherewithal to fly privately. Now, COVID shows not to do. So I think a large percentage of that will. And for those who drop off, I think the total addressable market of who is actually available to come into the space will far outweigh that drop off. So very optimistic about it.
That's brilliant. So very total addressable market growing, people coming in. Are your customers flying differently?
Don't know if we have a good connection with Mike.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us. I think we've lost you. Thank you very much. Jay, that's really annoying because Mike is a guy with an amazing pulse.
So much. We'll have Mike on another one of our sponsored events.
A quick question you've got from the audience, a great one actually from Mark Thibault.
Well, I would say that anecdotally that the last year or so has been primarily.
It's an amazing lag we're getting at the moment. A question for you from Mark Thibault over in Hong Kong, or sorry, Singapore, I think. Jay, we are all optimistic. From your US perspective, do you see the optimism and growth abroad accelerating in, say, Asia?
Yes, I think that the whole world is ready to get back to business and get back to travel, and especially international travel, and in both directions, from Asia to the United States, and of course, United States to Asia. So I do see that. Again, with the void of like being able to go to a live A base, for instance, and be able to socialize and get to see the customers and get to see our fellow sales professionals in that part of the world. I think that that's going to be great, and hopefully we'll get to see them. They'll come over here for NBAA base. But I do think that there's optimism globally, not just in the U.S. I still see the majority of the transactions in the U.S., but I see the enthusiasm growing everywhere. Yes.
Okay, great. We've got another question from Jean-Noel Robert at Airbus Corporate Jets. How long will bonus depreciation last for? That would have been a great question for Ed.
Yeah, I think that I just don't think it's going to go. I think our government is real busy right now, and I'm not sure that it's going to get a chance to focus on that this year. So I'm hopeful that it still is going to continue and qualify into 2022.
Great.
Hello, Steve.
That popped up suddenly, didn't it?
Yeah, I hope you were ready.
I was now, yeah.
Absolutely delighted to be joined by Steve Friedrich from Embraer, or not Embraer, as I always tend to call it. Steve, how are you?
Good. And it's a beautiful day down here in Florida, so thanks for having me, Mike, and rather Jay and Al. I appreciate it.
It's always a beautiful day for you in Florida. Jay, sorry, what did you want to ask Steve?
Well, Steve, what I was saying, maybe you heard this as we were saying about Ed Bolin, is that I really believe that the OEMs, the Embraers, the other manufacturers are going to begin to enjoy a big bump and boost as people start to say, I think that there's not a lot of pre-owned to look at. I think it's time now to look the other way and look at new. And some of those people were diverted for the last couple of years because of the spread between pre-owned and new. But I think the spread is coming closer together. The idea that there's a big pool of like new, couple of 3-4-year-old pre-owned to choose from is dwindled. Are you ready? Are you ready for the bump?
Well, not only are we ready for the bump, we've already seen the bump. And
Right.
the activity from around the world, North America has been very strong, but so is Latin America, Europe, Russia is coming back, as well as Asia Pacific. So across the globe, we've seen very, very strong demand right now.
This whole program today is about habits that have changed. And I think that for the OEMs, one of the biggest changes you had to endure and learn to work within is to not have the in-person trade shows, be it a regional or be it a major show. How have you found the client to respond and react and not have the opportunity to come, for instance, and go on a flight line where all the manufacturers have their wares out and can go from one to the other and back to the other? How has that worked for you?
It's worked really well. I'm very proud of the results that our marketing team had last year. When we saw the pandemic hit, we immediately pivoted to a digital platform and enhanced our content. And moving forward, we also found ways to connect and engage with customers in a meaningful way. In particular, it came down to showcasing the products, both from a digital standpoint and then from a virtual standpoint. And what we found is the result has been that the customers out there are very deliberate as they go through their purchasing decision. They are very determined to make a purchase of an aircraft because they realize they do not have the surety and the convenience that they may have had in the past with a combination of public and private transport. They have come to rely on a global basis on the private aviation to enable them to do their travel profiles. We call a lot of what's happening right now more personal travel, and it's unfortunate Mike wasn't able to comment more on this because I think he saw a large increase in personal travel. But that's where the line between personal and business have really blurred over this last year. People are moving from one safe, secure location to another. And yes, it's on a personal choice basis, but it's still enabling them to be very productive and engage with their clientele on a global basis. So what we're seeing is, while it may be considered a personal decision to travel, they're going from one home to another, one location to another. It is still having to have that business connectivity to enable productivity.
Right. Let me just say one thing real quick, Steve. Al, do you think there's a way to call Mike and have him not connect with his camera, but just be able to talk to us?
It's not on this system. I'll try and get him again in a minute.
May have been a bandwidth issue. So, Steve, one more question. Can you accommodate the bump? And, I know that you all have to be so careful about how you ramp up or even have a discussion about ramping up production. What kind of internal discussions are you having about being able to accommodate?
We are definitely looking at seeing what we can do to pull production forward. The issue right now, as you can imagine, is not the demand for the product. It's actually going ahead and engaging the supply chain in a meaningful way. The biggest issue that all of us are facing throughout the world are logistics. And that is going to continue to be an issue going forward until we get through and into a more post-pandemic phase when travel can open up again and we see more transport availability, both from a cargo standpoint on air as well as ships. Nothing really went well this year for anyone. However, we have been able to adapt to this and plan ahead. The key is, quite frankly, planning and then ruthless execution on what we planned. And that's going to be the key. But backlogs are extending out. If you have a client who wishes to get into a brand new aircraft right now, again, they have to be very determined and, more importantly, decisive, because there are very few birds out there to accommodate people in the near term. And quite frankly, the backlogs are going to continue to extend out.
Right, right. Are you looking forward to the opportunity to get back in front of the client in the more traditional methods that we've always enjoyed?
Yeah, I am, but I also think that we've learned quite a few things over this last year in terms of the way we engage with the client base. And the client base and the prospective base has really responded well to this digital and virtual enablement of viewing the product, experiencing the product. And when we go out and bring the aircraft to them or bring them in for a visit, they are already determined to buy an aircraft, and it's just a question of how quick we can get things done. And that's the other thing that I've seen over this last year. The velocity of the sale has definitely increased. And when you get people in here, it's enabled us to move much quicker through the process than we have in the past. So there's been some real benefits here that we should recognize. But at the same time, as we return to this in-person ability to meet, it's going to be interesting to see how the clients respond to that, because they're so used to being targeted and focused upon right now. And that's one thing we as an industry should really embrace, is that focus on the customer and enabling that specific experience for them, so they really get to experience and view the product in the way that they want to use it. That's going to be the key going forward for us.
And how about communicating with them not in person? I mean, are you using more e-blasts? Are you using other kinds of products?
So in some ways, yes, the social media e-blasts, but just picking up the phone and talking to them, the video stream has become a real key here. We have sold aircraft without ever actually physically meeting with the client or showing them the aircraft at this point. We've been able to do it all virtually. That's not the norm, but it is another avenue for us to use going forward, which is really going to be the key for us to keep embracing that and using that and increasing the velocity of the sale.
And when you take out the opportunity for the client to actually come to the factory, for instance, and be a one-on-one participant in speccing and in completion, are there any new delivery conditions in a contract that clients are demanding to have to protect them against something that they didn't get to do by having an in-person visit? Has anything changed there?
No, we haven't seen any changes there. I think we've always had a very fair way to look at that aspect of it, but we've been very good at being able to engage with people through virtual means, as well as sending them things in advance. But to be fair, we still are bringing people in.
Oh, great.
A very controlled, very hygienic way into the facility here. But it's also been very focused. In the past, we would take a look at having people all over the campus. Right now, we're limiting people to very specific areas. And of course, we're following all the recommended COVID and CDC protocols at this point, because we want to keep our employee base safe. Because the only way we're going to be able to continue to produce aircraft is if we can bring in our production personnel. And that's one of the things we've been very, very focused on, is seeing who needs to be here and when, and then enabling them to work remotely otherwise.
Right, right.
Okay, Steve, got a question from the audience, from Sylvie Perron at Ultimate Jet. Are you seeing growing demand in Europe for the Praetor?
Yes, very much so. We're seeing growing demand in Europe actually for all of our product line, but the Praetor has really been embraced by both Europeans as well as the global community. It is a fantastic aircraft, and the Super Mid is really, I think, found a sweet spot right now for much of the flying public, because they recognize that it does everything well. Because people are focused on regional flying more than international flying right now, this is something that they embrace because they see it as a real advantage that they have had, because they can get into certain areas they may not have been able to get into before with larger aircraft. So again, a very specific mission profile people are looking at. They're very deliberate in what they want. So Europe has seen some great acceptance across the board.
Okay, that's brilliant. I'm just having a look at the other questions. we unfortunately we haven't been able to connect to Mike, who's having terrible connectivity issues. But Steve, are you seeing interest from fleet buyers generally?
We're seeing some interest from new buyers. What was really interesting to me is that the first-time buyers have really accelerated the pre-owned market and the absorption of available aircraft out there, which has then taken the new aircraft buyer and make them much more demanding in terms of when they want to take delivery. Everyone was concerned that people would be pushing deliveries off last year. We actually saw, in many cases, the opposite, where people were accelerating the delivery as quickly as possible because they had a need to travel and they wanted that aircraft as soon as possible.
Okay, that's brilliant. And I was asking about bulk buyers. Have you got any more contracts to announce at NBAA base? Would you like to announce them now?
I can't comment on that right now, Al, unfortunately. Thank you for putting me on the spot.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, one of the things we could do as we wait to see if there are any other questions for Steve is maybe offline, Al, we could get Mike, do an interview with him and get it out to those people that came today. And so if you have questions that you wanted to ask Mike, maybe send them to us now so we could include them in that interview.
Great. Okay, let's go through quick questions now. Here's a great one from Scott McCreary, actually for both of you. Have you seen any interest from clients co-owning aircraft?
Yes, we've seen partners come in and buy aircraft. That's become more common, and we especially as they expand up in the product line. But it's not necessarily driving the marketplace for us from the new standpoint.
Jay, are you seeing people partnering?
I do. And I've seen complicated partnering arrangements where they are not even based in the same city and try to decide, but they'll each spend 6 months in the other person's city and try to decide where to keep the airplane and where to find a cruise home. So I have seen that. It's certainly another way of reducing an entrant cost to getting in is to have a partner. And different than getting into a share, like a FlexJet share, you can continue the kind of control that you might have wanted in whole aircraft ownership, but reduce the cost by having a 50% partner or a 25% partner. So yeah, I have.
Okay, great. We've got a question. Based upon the days on market, this is from Jet Valley's Jeremy. Based upon the days of market for mid to late model Cessnas 172s, it appears the flight training is buzzing. However, don't you think the biggest issue will be the ability to find crews to find the aircraft? Is there a new innovative solution for this building storm? Pilot shortage. Jay.
You know, it'll be interesting to see how sustainable a pilot shortage is. At the beginning of the pandemic, with so many furloughs from the airlines, I think that there began to be a greater pool of available pilots who were probably concerned, even if the airlines would hire back, of the sustainability of that and how might the airlines change. So I think we got an influx of some new pilots that came in. I do think that flight training is up. I think that's critically important. You know, we don't have the military actively engaged as it was over the last many years to bring pilots in to come into corporate. So I think anything we can do to get people excited and training again to be pilots and mechanics, all levels of flight personnel are going to be really important. And Steve, that affects, of course, your side of it too, selling a pre-owned or a new plane.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to be key going forward, is to have the availability of pilot training, but also to create the pipeline of pilots. Recently, I was appointed to the Board of Trustees of Elizabeth City State University, part of the University of North Carolina. The reason for that is they're focused on aviation, business aviation, and growing that pilot base. So I think it's going to be vitally important that we continue to attract people into the industry. I've had a lot of conversations over the last several weeks of various universities looking and saying this is a great industry, the aerospace industry in general. So I'm hoping to see more grassroots, ground level support for the industry as we go forward, because that'll be key to attract young people into it and to continue to grow the pool of talent that we have available to us.
And just having events like BASE or regional forums, places where younger people who are thinking about aviation as a career can come, can sort of rub shoulders with the people that are in it and get enthusiastic and passionate about it. It's hard to gather them and excite them over a Zoom call like it would be walking around and seeing the airplanes and having them sort of think about them being the pilot. So it'll be, that's another important reason to get back together again, I think.
We always say, if you don't show it, you won't sell it. So that's the key right there. And you have to be able to show it and really engender that kind of excitement and desire about the product and about the industry.
Right.
Great. We've got a couple more questions. Jody Howard is asking you, Steve, what is your most popular product for the Asian Pacific market? And how do you see the charter market in Asia for your products?
So the most popular product we're seeing right now, we've seen some good activity on, believe it or not, Phenom 100s for some short-term island hopping. And of course, the Phenom 300 and the Praetor. In particular, for the charter market, I think the Praetor is going to be very well accepted in the long term because of what it's able to do and where it's able to go. The amazing thing on these super mid is the people who are flying that still want the capability and performance of a light jet and being able to get into some of those smaller, tighter, less regulated airports, which really enables more convenience. So that's how I see some things happening in that marketplace.
Okay, and probably the most poorly disguised sales message we've had from James Pearson. For Mike or Steve, how is Viasat's Ka-band connectivity on the Praetor setting it apart from other flight options in Europe? Sorry, that's James from Viasat asking that.
So I would say that, thank you, James, for that ability to go ahead and selflessly or selfishly plug yourself. I think that's great. The key here is connectivity. Even though we're seeing more and more personal travel, the reality is they want to be productive on the flight. And what we spend the most time talking about is that connectivity. And that's going to be something that will continue for the future. People have an expectation to have an at-home experience on board the aircraft. And quite frankly, it was interesting because I've had these types of calls from the aircraft and they've worked fine. Okay? They've worked very well. So I think it's important that we look at that. And when I take a look at the future and what's going to be the #1 issue customers are going to focus on, it's going to be connectivity inside of that cabin comfort that they have. It's going to be expected to be there. And if you don't have it, it's not just a competitive advantage anymore. It becomes a necessity to be part of the aircraft.
Great. And another question, actually, we're suddenly getting loads. One from Mike Francis. Steve, what's the impetus you're seeing for new buyers now? Is it that they can't find what they're looking for in the pre-owned market, or are they now valuing the benefits of a new aircraft more?
It's a combination. What's happened as the pre-owned market has basically been absorbed is that people are now moving up into the new. The other thing is we've seen price stability in the pre-owned market. It has enabled people to look and actually compare the operation of a pre-owned versus a new aircraft. And in many cases, what we've seen is that the new aircraft, from an economic standpoint, will actually outperform, even including the capital acquisition costs of the pre-owned aircraft, will still outperform them from an economic standpoint. So a lot of customers are rather surprised because there's an expectation that pre-owned is more cost effective. But when you look at the operations, you realize that a brand new aircraft will do everything you want and still give you that cost effectiveness that you were looking for. So that's the key right there. It's the best of both worlds.
Steve, another question from Mariana Santos. How has post-COVID changed the mix of buyers for Embraer? Are you seeing a higher influx of first-time buyers? And also, what about corporate buyers?
So we're actually seeing a fairly consistent level of first-time buyers. We've always done well with first-time buyers. What has happened, though, is existing clients, existing aircraft owners have found that they're able to very easily sell their current asset, and they're coming to us. So again, there's an upgrade that's happening. Predominantly, the buying over this last 9 months has been private individuals and private companies. but we're seeing a lot of activity and information gathering from the corporate side as they look to post-COVID and saying, how am I going to support my corporation, my executive leadership, my management to move from site to site? And that's why they're taking a very hard look at the light to mid-sized market because of the regional focus that they have right now.
That's great. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Really great to see you.
You too, Al, and you too. I've enjoyed, Jay and I get to speak on a regular basis, but I am looking forward to base and getting to see everyone in Las Vegas again.
And let's not forget Miami in November, right, Al?
Thanks, Jay. See you in Miami November 2nd and 3rd. We can catch up there. Look forward to seeing everyone. Thanks, Steve. Great to see you.
Thanks.
So apart from the connectivity with Mike, which we will solve next time, James is suggesting that we should have him on a plane next time. Jay, what's your summing up? What's your takeaway?
Well, I got to tell you, what a great group of people. And as I read on the side, the group of people who have watched and sent questions, great attendance, great presenters, an important topic. I think everybody that's been on today has talked about the changes that they've had to endure, the new processes they've had to put into place, and of course the successes that they've had. And the biggest question will be, what habits stick? What habits will go back to what they were? And that's to be seen. But the idea now that we're all a little bit freer to go out and about and be with our friends and start to be with industry professionals in smaller groups and looking forward to what's coming, very, very exciting. And, I think in the depths of this pandemic, certainly a year-ish ago, where we didn't have an idea what it was going to be like, we are all seeing some light at the end of a tunnel, and very excited. Al, thank you, and thanks to your wonderful staff for putting this great event together.
Thank you. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us. It's been great to see everyone. Apologies for the connection problems. We'll solve those next time. And I think from Jay and I, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Bye-bye. Thanks.